Right now, as you watch this, you are having thoughts. Thoughts about what you see, thoughts about whether this is interesting, maybe a thought about something completely unrelated that just appeared from nowhere. Here is the question nobody asks. Where did those thoughts come from? You will say, from me, from my brain, from my mind. But what if that is not entirely true? What if a significant portion of what you think you are thinking was never yours to begin with? Scientists have been studying this for decades. The results are uncomfortable. Conservative estimates suggest that somewhere between 30 and 40% of the thoughts passing through your mind on any given day did not originate with you. They came from somewhere else, from something else, and most of the time, you have no idea. This is not a metaphor, this is not philosophy. This is neuroscience, microbiology, and behavioral psychology, all pointing at the same conclusion. Your mind is not the sealed private space you think it is. It is more like an open market. And a lot of what gets sold there, you never ordered. Let's start with the most disturbing finding first. Because once you understand this one, everything else makes sense. Inside your body right now, there are approximately 38 trillion bacteria. That is more microbial cells in your body than there are human cells. You are, by pure cell count, more bacteria than you are human. For a long time, scientists thought these bacteria were passengers, hitchhikers, living in your gut, doing their thing, not really affecting who you are. That turned out to be spectacularly wrong. In 2011, a study at McMaster University took two groups of mice. One group was normal, the other group was bred to be germ-free, raised without any gut bacteria at all. The germ-free mice behaved completely differently. They were more anxious, more risk-prone, less socially connected. Their behavior had changed at a fundamental level, not because of their genes, not because of their upbringing, because of the bacteria in their gut, or rather, the absence of it. Then researchers did something more unsettling. They took the gut bacteria from the bold, risk-taking mice and transplanted them into the anxious, timid mice. The timid mice became bold. The bold mice became timid. Personality transferred through bacteria. Think about what that means for a moment. Your anxiety, your confidence, your social behavior, your appetite for risk. All of these things can be influenced by organisms living in your digestive system. Organisms that have their own survival interests. Organisms that are not you. The gut-brain connection is now one of the most researched areas in neuroscience. The vagus nerve runs directly from your gut to your brain. It is essentially a communication highway, and the traffic on that highway is not one way. Your gut bacteria produce neurotransmitters, real ones, serotonin, dopamine, GABA. Approximately 90% of your body's serotonin is produced in the gut, not in the brain, in the gut. Serotonin is the molecule most associated with mood, well-being, and emotional stability. And most of it is being produced by bacteria. Bacteria that are not you. Bacteria that have interests that are not necessarily aligned with yours. Here is where it gets stranger. Certain gut bacteria have been shown to influence cravings. If you have ever found yourself desperately wanting sugar or junk food, even when you are not hungry, there is a real possibility that the craving did not come from your conscious mind. It came from bacteria that metabolize sugar and need you to eat more of it to survive. They send chemical signals up the vagus nerve. Your brain receives those signals, and your brain translates them into what feels like your desire, your choice, your craving. But it wasn't. It was a bacterial memo, and you acted on it without knowing. Subscribe to the channel because we are just getting started. Now let's move from the biological to the social, because bacteria are only one of the ways your thoughts get colonized. The second way is far more familiar and somehow even more disturbing. You have heard of social contagion, the idea that behaviors spread through groups like infections. Most people think of this as a metaphor. It is not a metaphor. In 2008, researchers at Harvard published a landmark study on social networks and behavior. They tracked thousands of people over decades, and what they found was that behaviors and emotional states spread through social networks in patterns that are mathematically identical to the spread of viruses. Happiness spreads, depression spreads, loneliness spreads, obesity spreads, not because people are weak or easily influenced, but because human brains are wired for social synchronization. It is a survival mechanism that goes back hundreds of thousands of years. In a tribe, conformity kept you alive. Your brain learned to mirror the people around you automatically, without asking permission, without your conscious involvement. This happens at the neurological level through mirror neurons. When you watch someone do something, your brain activates the same neural pathways as if you were doing it yourself. When you watch someone in pain, your pain centers activate. When you watch someone afraid, your fear response activates. You are not just observing other people, you are partially becoming them. Every conversation you have, every video you watch, every person you spend time with is leaving a trace in your neural architecture, changing the patterns of how you think, changing what feels normal to you, changing what feels desirable. And this is before we even get to the algorithms. The average person spends between 6 and 7 hours per day looking at screens. Every one of those screens is connected to a system designed by some of the most sophisticated behavioral engineers in human history. Their explicit goal is to predict and then shape your behavior, not to inform you, not to entertain you, to shape you. The recommendation algorithm does not show you what you want to see. It shows you what will keep you watching. These are not the same thing. What keeps you watching is what triggers your emotional responses most reliably. Outrage, fear, desire, validation. The algorithm runs millions of experiments on your behavior every day. It learns what makes you click, what makes you stop scrolling, what makes you watch to the end, and then it feeds you more of that. Not because it cares about you, because engagement is the product and your attention is being sold. Over time, this reshapes what you find interesting, what you find scary, what you find desirable, what political views feel natural to you, what kind of person you feel like you are. The algorithm is not just reflecting your preferences back at you. It is manufacturing new ones, and you experience them as your own authentic thoughts, because by the time the thought arrives in your conscious mind, you have no memory of where it came from. Now combine the bacteria changing your mood and cravings, the social contagion changing your emotional baseline and behavior, the algorithms reshaping your preferences and worldview, and you start to see the picture. Your mind is an ecosystem, not a sovereign. It is constantly being acted on by forces that have interests of their own: bacterial interests, social interests, commercial interests, and none of them announced themselves when they moved in. Here is the part that most people stop at. They hear this and they think, okay, so I am influenced by things outside me. Everyone is. That's just being human. And that is true, but it misses the deeper question, the one that actually keeps philosophers and neuroscientists awake. If so much of what you think and feel and want was shaped by bacteria, by social contagion, by algorithms, by the people around you, by advertising, by childhood conditioning, by 1,000 other forces you did not choose and cannot fully identify, then what exactly is the part that is you? Where is the line between your genuine self and the accumulation of everything that has colonized your mind? Neuroscientist David Eagleman puts it this way: the brain that does the experiencing is not the same brain that makes the decisions. Most of your decisions are made before your conscious mind is even aware a decision is being made. Brain imaging studies show that activity in the brain predicting a decision begins several seconds before the person reports being aware of having decided. Several seconds. The decision was made, then consciousness was informed, then consciousness experienced itself as having made the decision. The story of authorship was constructed after the fact. This is not fringe science. This is the current mainstream understanding of how human decision-making works. You are not the author of your thoughts in the way you think you are. You are more like the narrator of a story that was written somewhere else, reading it out loud and experiencing it as creation. So what do you do with this? There are two responses. The first is despair. If I am not really the author of my thoughts, if my identity is a construction, if my preferences are manufactured, then nothing means anything. I am just a biological machine being operated by bacteria and algorithms. But there is a second response, and it is far more useful. Knowing this gives you something most people never have: the ability to ask which thoughts are actually yours. Most people never ask that question because they don't know it needs to be asked. They assume every thought that appears in their mind is native, original, theirs. You now know that is not true, which means you can start to look at your thoughts differently, not as facts about who you are, but as visitors. Some of them are worth keeping, some of them are bacterial, some of them were installed by an algorithm 6 months ago. Some of them belong to your parents, and you inherited them without knowing. The practice of asking where a thought came from is one of the most radical things a person can do. It is rare, it is uncomfortable, and it is one of the few genuine acts of intellectual independence available to us. The people who built the algorithms know this. The people who design advertising campaigns know this. The people who run social media platforms know this. They built entire industries on the fact that most people will never ask, that most people will experience manufactured preferences as authentic desires and act on them accordingly. You are now one of the people who asked. That changes something, not everything. The bacteria are still there. The algorithms are still running. The social contagion is still spreading. But you now have a name for what is happening. And naming something is the first step toward not being completely controlled by it. Your mind is the most valuable real estate in the known universe because it is the place where you live. It is the only place you have ever lived. And it is currently occupied by tenants you did not choose. The question is not whether you can evict all of them. You cannot. The bacteria are staying. The social influences are staying. The question is whether you know they are there, whether you watch the thoughts that arrive in your mind with even a fraction of the skepticism you would apply to a stranger offering you something for free. Because nothing about your attention is free. Someone is always paying for it or being paid because of it. The only variable is whether you know. So next time a thought appears in your mind, a craving, a fear, an opinion that feels completely natural and obviously correct, a desire you cannot explain, ask one question: where did this come from? Not to paralyze yourself, not to doubt everything, just to know, just to be the kind of person who asks. That question is the beginning of something. What exactly is up to you? Which part of you decides that? Is a different question entirely. What thought have you had recently that you now suspect might not be entirely yours? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And subscribe, because the next video goes even